RSA Insurance Agency, and we have a little museum that represents sort of a lifetime collection of things that Ross saw as antique, and Ross likes antiques. And if you think about American pickers, a lot of people in America like antiques and like things that show the history of their own life, their parents' lives, their grandparents' lives, and perhaps a genealogy as far back as they can go. I've been doing this for a long time, and one of the first items I got as a young person was something that very few people will know, and you can well imagine, since I'm a guy, and most people that know me know I like antique cars. This is an item that goes with an antique car, and I'll give you a hint as to the year that this probably came out, and that would be 1908. This, I think, would have had two names, a valve lapper or a valve seater. And if you will notice, and I don't know whether the camera will be able to pick it up or not, but it's got a little fork on it with two prongs. And in 1908, when Henry Ford came out with the Model T, he started out with his letter series at the origin of the Ford Motor Company in 1903, and he kept Model A for a year, and then he went to Model B in 04, and C and D, I think, in 04. There was really no such thing as a model year in those days, over 110 years ago. But when he got to the Model T, Henry Ford thought he had made the perfect car, perhaps never to be surpassed. And one of the things that he did in the Model T, and it's reason that I think this may have been only for the Model T, and I think only for the first few years of it, and that is in the engine. And the Model T Ford was a flathead 4-cylinder engine, and if you were rebuilding that engine, you would need to seat the valves, and you would need an instrument that would turn that valve two-thirds of a turn one way and back a third, and rock that back and forth on your grit that comes under the head of the valve, so that it would seat it on the block, and hence the term valve seater. And the actual valve that went in that block, and it wasn't on the heads, because the head just held the spark plugs and completed the combustion chamber. But this valve seater, the mechanic would put his compound underneath the valve, and on the top of the valve, and this would not be in modern times because it would create hot spots in the engine, but they hardly knew what performance was back then. And so all of the valves had two dimples in them, where this fork set down in the valve in those dimples. Now, I've got an actual Model T valve in the museum, but it's put together so tight that it would have taken a lot to get it out. So I'm just showing you the valve seater right now, and if you come by and look at it, I put it right over the valve so that someone looking in the little museum could see something about how they did this. And if you'll watch as I crank it, it'll go, there's 2/3, back a third, 2/3, and back a third. So you're turning the handle just one way, but as it rocks back and forth, it's seating that valve. This is a Model T valve seater from 1908, and when Henry Ford quit the dimples in the valves, I don't actually know, and I don't know that there are very many mechanics, if any, that are left that would know how to do this to make it original. They later had one just exactly like this, only with a short steel rod and only a rubber suction cup on the end of it, and it could be used on any engine. And it did the exact same thing, and it rocked back and forth, and if the valve was flat, you could work it on any engine. I hope you find that of interest, and if you want to stop by and ever check out the little museum, if you look for this, you will see the valve underneath it and the dimples in the valve. We're going to do this continually to try and illustrate as many of the items, and it may end up being 50 little segments on YouTube or something like that you can see at home at your convenience. And some of this is really interesting antiquity.